There we go. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, so this is basically the topic that we're going to be covering today. We're going to be going into several topics, some new things. You know, if you're familiar with Attachment Extractor already, there's probably some new things in here that you haven't seen before. Yeah. So that being said, let's get right into it. So let's talk a little bit about Attachment Extractor. Basically, what Attachment Extractor does is it is a tool that we provide. It's set up to move documents from your Dynamics 365 database to an alternative storage location. So there's a couple of things to note. So on one side of this, we have our Microsoft Dynamics 365 instance. One of the things that we all kind of know about this is attachments and notes that are stored in the database pretty much consume up to about 70% of the storage for Dynamics 365 online. You know, if you need extra storage, it's about $9.99 per gig per month. The reason that little asterisk is there is a rumor going around that this price is going to go up significantly in the future. So you can kind of expect a little bit of a price increase there on Microsoft's side. One of the things, though, with these attachments and notes, as we know, it's really difficult to kind of find these. You know, they're non-searchable. You can't use the CRM global search to find these things. So that's kind of a little bit of a negative side of storing these things in there. On the other side, we have two different storage options here. One is the Microsoft Azure Blob Storage, which is new for us. And then SharePoint as well, which is something that we've been doing with this for now a long time. One of the benefits, major benefits, is, as you can see here, SharePoint has a much lower cost per gig per month. It's 20 cents. And then you can do the Dynamics 365 SharePoint integration. You're able to kind of view these files and everything like that. You know, that are related to whatever record inside of Dynamics 365. Basically, how we combine the two together is naturally with Attachment Extractor. And what Attachment Extractor does is it's a service that either runs on a local machine or on our online instance. Basically what it does is the service goes in and analyzes the database. It either then moves or copies the files from Dynamics 365 over to SharePoint or the Azure Blob. And basically what that does for you is it shrinks your CRM database, also helps you simplify with migrations and updates. And one of the major things, one of the newer things here that we have is there's no change in the Dynamics 365 user interface. This is something that it's going to be repeated a lot during this first little section of slides, but it's something to really be able to see once we kind of get into the demo. So that being said, just to give you a brief example, let's say you had 50 gigs of additional storage. Your annual cost on that, if you were doing it in Dynamics 365, would be $5,994. Naturally, that price could increase if the rumors are true. For SharePoint, that would be $120. So the total savings by moving your attachments from your Dynamics 365 database over to SharePoint or the Azure Blob Storage, your total savings would be roughly around $5,874 a year. So that being said, let's talk a little bit about SharePoint and the Azure Blob, some of the pros and cons to them. So for example, SharePoint, one of the major pros of this is using, when you're using Attachment Extractor, is naturally, again, as I said, I'd be repeating this a lot, there's no change in the user interface. This is new. So your users, they don't know, basically, if they're in Dynamics 365, they have no idea that the file is actually coming from an alternate storage location. One of the nice things about SharePoint, naturally, is your advanced document management system. It's got, you know, content search, versioning, check-in, check-out, a whole bunch of other different things. The user interface and grid views are also built into Dynamics 365. You know, if you set up the document management in your Dynamics 365 and integrate it with your SharePoint instance, you can view these documents inside of Dynamics 365 and never basically have to go to SharePoint. It supports custom logic. with a structured library. And what we mean by that is, you're able to set up these libraries and these folder structures basically any way you want. You can set all that stuff up, so that's really handy. And again, the low costs. Some of the cons to that is standalone security when using the Dynamics 365 integration. This basically means maintenance of a separate system. Basically, these fall into one category. If you're basically having to maintain security on your Dynamics 365 instance, and then basically also on your SharePoint instance as well. There are naturally third-party tools out there that will help you do that, but they do come at a cost. So that's something to kind of be aware of if you're wanting to use this CRM SharePoint integration. Talk a little bit about the Microsoft Azure Blob Storage, some of the major pros on that. Again, so there's no change in the user interface. It's a pretty easy setup, and it has like a low to zero maintenance that you kind of have to do on it. It's all done by simple access control via a SAS key or a SAS key. It has very low costs. It's kind of hard to determine and give you like a definite cost of what that is because it's based on number of accesses to the Azure Blob and how much storage you're actually using on the Azure Blob, but the costs are pretty low. One of the major cons on this, though, is the fact that it's just basically a simplified file repository. You just put files in there to store them. There is no search. There is no UI interface from Dynamics 365 to your Azure Blob. So yeah, so that's basically what it is. It's just a file repository, somewhere to hold your files. So let's talk a little bit about the demo, what we're going to show today. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the look and feel using the Dynamics SharePoint integration. We're also going to check out the Azure Blob Storage and how that looks inside of just using that, and then go over the setup and configuration. We're kind of going to be skipping around between these points, but that's just the highlight of it. So I want to go ahead and get into my first demo system here. What we're going to be showing here basically is this one. We have this set up for AttachmentExtractor to extract all emails and annotation or notes to SharePoint, and we do have the the CRM SharePoint integration in place. One of the things that you can see here is I'm looking at my notes. I have one note attached here to this particular record. It just looks like it normally would inside of Dynamics 365. I can click on it and then have it open up and show you my, I can get the file from there. So the interesting part about that is this file is actually not stored in the Dynamics 365 database. It's actually stored in SharePoint. So if I go over here to my documents that are associated with this particular record, I got my main folder here. Here I have a subfolder that the AttachmentExtractor service is actually creating where I'm actually storing all notes in. If I go inside of that, I have the same PDF. So one of the major questions that kind of comes up, when we are kind of showing this, it's pretty stealthy. And if you're an admin, the main thing is like, well, how do I actually know that the attachment is being extracted? How does this actually work? Well, basically what we have is there is a plugin that fires when you load up the page, and then this plugin actually accesses the SharePoint or the file location on SharePoint and pulls that back into Dynamics 365 for the user to actually grab. One of the benefits to kind of now doing it this way is the fact that if you're actually just using SharePoint as a file repository, that you don't have to set up any kind of SharePoint security, right? So basically the user that the service is running under needs to be a SharePoint admin. So when the page is accessed, the plugin fires, and that plugin then uses the credentials of that admin to go and grab these files from SharePoint and basically stream them back to CRM. So yeah, so basically if you're using SharePoint again as the This is just a file repository. This works great. You don't have to maintain that security on both parts, right? The downside to this is if you're actually using it like we're doing here, you do have to do that because the document management piece inside of Dynamics 365 actually is just basically a portal into SharePoint, so you do have to kind of use that here. So that's basically how that works. Okay, so that's how the plugin kind of streams everything back. One thing of note here is another feature that's going to be coming up is that you're going to be able to actually define just a small ending here, whether that be like an asterisk or extracted or whatever you want to call it. It can be set out here so you can actually see if the file has been extracted or not. That's a feature that's coming up here pretty shortly. So kind of stay tuned for that. Let's talk a little bit about how you would go ahead and set this up. We're going to show this basically in an online instance here. I've got it opened up, but let me just show you how easy it is to kind of get to this configuration page. You're just going to go to your settings here and then to your attachment extractor tool. This brings you right in here to the service where we can administrate the service here. So that then opens up here for you. What I'm going to do here is just kind of open up the config on this is our service here that is running for this particular Dynamics 365 instance. I'll open that up, this config here, kind of scroll down a little bit so you can see it. And I'm not going to go over these before. There's a previous webinars that you can go on our website and look at that kind of goes over how to configure all this. But basically the main thing is here is as I'm configuring this, I'm picking my storage system, I'm picking my SharePoint integration, I'm picking my CRM integrated SharePoint, which is basically the connector between the two. And then basically I'm giving it the username and password of the administrator, the SharePoint administrator, that's going to be doing moving the files back and forth between SharePoint and CRM, streaming them back and forth. Pretty simple and easy to set up. I mean, usually once you get that going, it goes. So that being said, that's the easiest way to kind of show that. Want to move on to and show you the Azure Blob piece. So let me go over to, we have another system here. In this particular instance here, we are, it's the same kind of thing here. All these files naturally have been extracted out to our Azure Blob. I can again click on this. It's been streamed back to my user where it downloads it. Again, I can open it up and view my file very easily. Here, naturally, I have no UI to kind of look at this, so how are we going to look at these files? That is where, as an administrator, you're going to be using this Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer. So I'm not going to kind of go over how to kind of connect this to your Azure Blob. We've already gone ahead and done that, but just to kind of show you where this all is, where it's all located here. I have here my key, I have my blob containers, and this is the particular folder that we're extracting all these files into. So let me just sort this correctly. All right, so you can see here I've got basically all my files in this, just from CRM system, just dumped here into my repository. And this is exactly where I stream these back from. So how do I set this up? Let me get back into my CRM system here and show you kind of how that's done. Again, I've gone ahead and gone to my settings, gone to my attachment extractor page. And here is my particular service that I have set up for this. I'll just go ahead and open that up. Okay. And again, very simple and easy to do. Here, instead of selecting SharePoint, I'm going to select the Azure Blob Storage, and then I'm presented with my configuration for this. All I need to do this is my account name, the container which I'm going to actually push my attachments and notes to, and then my SAS token. Okay, so pretty simple. How do I get the account name? That's something that you're going to know when you you set up your the Azure Blob. So that's pretty basic. But where do I get this information from? Well, then basically what I need to do is kind of go back into here, into my my Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer. Here I can actually just come right in here. This is the container that I want to push it to. If you have a really long one like we do, you can basically come in here, click on it, say rename, and then just straight up Control C, copy it out of here, and paste it into the configuration. The most important piece, though, however, is naturally the how do I get the SAS key? Pretty simple to do. I just come here to my storage container, right click, okay, come down, and I say here, where is it? Get shared access signature. That's going to give me my key, so I'll go ahead and click that. A couple of very important things to note. This key is based, so it's timed. So, push it as long as you feel comfortable with. I'm just going to go with 2020 here. So this key is good for 2 years. And then the most important thing is the permissions that you need here are read, write, delete, and list. So you need all of them. All right. Once I'm done setting this up, yeah, of course, all these access policy remains the same, and but here, so I'll go ahead and create my my shared access signature. Okay. Once that's done here, this is my my container. What I want to grab here is this query string right here. And the easy thing to do naturally is to copy it. Okay. Then I can close this up. And then I can actually go back into Dynamics 365 and paste it in there. So again, it's just basically these two are just kind of copy and paste. Put those in there. You need the account, save the service. You're good to go. That's all you have to do to set this up. So it's real simple, straightforward way to set this up. Just to kind of show you a little bit here on how this actually works, just to show you some files that are being extracted here. I have a file here that I'm going to attach. So I'll just go ahead and choose the file. All right, and open. Attach it there as a note. And then say done. All right. So I've just now added that into the system here. Let's go over to our blob storage here. Let's hit the refresh a couple times. Let's see. Just takes a few minutes to kind of get it in there. The service basically goes through, has to recognize that it's in there. So it takes a couple seconds here for it to get in there. I'll just keep pounding on the refresh button. It's like somewhat waiting for a web page to load, but this goes relatively quickly. That it's just the one file that it has to grab. So we're still waiting on it. Actually, when you're testing these things, it goes a lot quicker. But here we go. Hang on. There we go. So there, it made it in. There's my PDF that I have. And again, if I go back here to CRM, you'll see it, stays the same. So basically here, from here, again, if I click on it, it's just like, it's just for your users, it feels like they're, it's this stuff's coming from CRM when it actually is coming from the Azure Blob Storage. So really nice way to do that. Really simple. It's not confusing to your users. So they just see what what they're used to seeing. Want to go and talk a little bit about some of the upcoming features. I already kind of covered one. That being being able to do like some kind of string or text or something like that that lets you know that the file has actually been extracted. If that's something that you need. The other thing is transparent activity content extraction. Basically, what that is just to give an example, is one of the things that we noticed about our CRM system is that it's naturally the activities. I mean, not the activities, but the attachments and the notes that are actually they're taking up a lot of room. But the other thing is this, like for example, when we have these long email chains, email consists of about 10 emails back and forth in these replies, and they with all kinds of stuff attached to it. It kind of extends. Like once you get to that final email and you read through it, there's just that huge email chain that's in there. Basically, what this does is it takes these messages and kind of breaks them up and stores them, and then kind of does an on-demand, like, so when I'm actually in there looking at this email or any activity basically, and I'm scrolling through this, since it's all kind of broken up, it just kind of streams everything back in there. So basically what it's done is it's taking that email down to its first, the last email that was sent, but then streams all these chunks of these little other emails in the chain back to it as you go through it. What that does is that drastically reduces that size of that email, but again, the users, because it's streaming back, the users never know that it's actually just pulling that data in from from another place, and you're seeing all this stuff just as you would a regular email. But again, that helps you drop and condense your storage space even more. That is going to be releasing around Q1, so be on the lookout for that. So that basically concludes the demonstration and the webinar for today. I want to thank